900 hours GMT right now, and that is 12 noon in Gaza and in Israel. You're watching Al Jazeera's continuing coverage of the first phase of the Gaza ceasefire plan. It's the long-awaited release of the last living Israeli captives that has now taken place. All 20 of them have been released by Hamas. They've been handed over to the Israeli army in Gaza. It happened just as the U.S. President Donald Trump arrived in Israel ahead of a summit in Egypt later on Monday. So jubilation in Israel and an anxious wait for families in the occupied Palestinian territories. The long-awaited prisoner swap between Israel and Hamas is underway. Hamas has released all 20 living Israeli captives as agreed under the U.S. brokered ceasefire deal. They were handed over to the Red Cross in 2 separate groups. The Israeli military has confirmed all captives are now in Israeli custody, and they'll be undergoing medical examinations in southern Israel. These images show the 7 Israeli captives that were released in the first batch. They've now reunited with their families for the first time in more than 2 years. And the mother of one of the captives released spoke to him for the first time in a video call.
אתה חוזר הביתה, כולכם חוזרים הביתה, אני אוהבת אותך. חיים שלי, תודה לאל, נגמרה המלחמה, אין מלחמה. אתה בא הביתה, חיים של אמא, אתה בא הביתה, אין מלחמה.
Well, the release of the Israeli captives was celebrated by emotional crowds in what's known as Hostage Square in Tel Aviv. That's where tens of thousands of Israelis have been protesting every week since the war began. Many of them have accused the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of sabotaging and delaying previous attempts to reach a deal.
I waited for this day so much. 2 years we've been waiting for the hostages to come back home, for the war to stop, for the soldiers to come back home. This is a historic day. This is a happy day. They're coming home.
I hope to see over 20 hostages come home, and I just pray that they're all healthy and strong and that their families are there to greet them and that they're safe.
Well, soon after the Israeli captives were released, buses carrying released Palestinian prisoners were seen leaving Ofer prison near Ramallah. That's in the occupied West Bank. Israel is releasing nearly 2,000 Palestinian prisoners. 250 of them are from the occupied West Bank, including occupied East Jerusalem. They've been serving life and long sentences. More than 1,700 Palestinians detained during the war from Gaza are also being released. The UN considers them forcibly disappeared. 154 Palestinians in total are being forced into exile by Israel. This hour as well, the U.S. President Donald Trump is set to address the Israeli parliament, where he's expected to hail his success on the ceasefire in Gaza. The U.S. president spoke to reporters on board Air Force One. He said the war was over and that Hamas would comply with his plan to disarm. But for now, the group will remain in Gaza for a period of time.
Where they are standing because they do want to stop the problems. And they've been open about it, and we gave them approval for a period of time. You have to understand, they've lost probably 60,000 people. That's a lot of retribution. They've lost 60,000 people, and the ones that are living right now were, in many cases, very young when this all started. And we are having them watch that there's not going to be big crime or some of the problems that you have when you have areas like this that have been literally demolished. You know, you have 2 million people, and probably it'll be less than that, but you have close to 2 million people going back to buildings that have been demolished. And a lot of bad things can happen. So we want it to be safe.
We're getting reports this hour that Netanyahu is considering joining President Trump at the Gaza summit in Egypt, in Sharm el-Sheikh. That's going to take place in just a few hours' time. Noor Odeh, you're following developments in Israel from Jordan's capital, Amman, because the Israeli government has banned Al Jazeera from reporting in Israel on the occupied West Bank. What are you hearing about this? Is Netanyahu confirmed to go?
Well, we don't have official confirmation, Darine, but the Israeli media and some Arab outlets are in fact reporting that upon Trump's insistence, Netanyahu may be also attending the Sharm el-Sheikh summit, and that there was a phone call between him and the Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi. We have to wait and see if there's an official statement from the Israeli Prime Minister's office or from the Egyptian President's office, but this was something that really was a poke in the eye for Netanyahu. On the one hand, this summit is discussing the future of Gaza, of Palestine in general, of the reconstruction, of a path to two states, perhaps, all of which are subjects that Netanyahu doesn't want to touch. And on the other, the detractors of Benjamin Netanyahu in Israel were telling him, why weren't you invited? You don't seem to be very popular in the region, and certainly it doesn't look like you have a lot of control or influence over the events. It's really a catch-22 for the Israeli Prime Minister. Not attending will make him look quite isolated and irrelevant. Attending will make him look like he's complicit in ending the war. And for his right-wing allies in the government, this is a break-it point. And one commentator who is traditionally known to be quite close to Benjamin Netanyahu said the visit will seal his fate, and Israel might be looking at early elections.
Noor, I mean, speaking of that, we understand also that some ministers have decided to boycott today's session at the Knesset, right, where Netanyahu is meant to speak, and so is President Donald Trump in just a short time. We are looking at the live picture, and we do expect them to start speaking this hour.
Yeah, it is quite phenomenal. I saw at least one member of the Knesset from the Otzma Yehudi, Jewish Power Party, saying that she will boycott the speech, that this was not a ceasefire or an agreement for peace, that this was a disgrace. It didn't secure Israel's security. Let's just remember and remind our viewers that the coalition, a ruling coalition in Israel, is the most right-wing in Israel's history. They've waged war. They've been waging war on 7 fronts for the past 2 years, and they don't want to end any of them. In fact, we heard from Netanyahu less than 24 hours ago saying the war is not over. He didn't mention Gaza by name. He alluded to some so-called enemies that were attempting to rearm and regroup. But the idea that Israel can wage war indefinitely, can annex territory, can call the shots, can attack capitals around the region without any accountability, without any breaks, is what this coalition wants. And it's exactly, at least for the moment, what Trump seems to want to end.
For anyone joining us this hour, Noor, just walk us through what's happened so far, because in the past hours you've been telling us how the choreography of today has been so significant, right? Trump's arrival to Tel Aviv coincided with the release of the living captives from Gaza. Just walk us through all of that.
Yeah, well, since the 8 in the morning local time, we saw the first batch of living Israeli captives released, 7 initially. As the plane of Donald Trump was touching down in Tel Aviv, the remaining 13 living Israeli captives were released from Hamas captivity, handed over to the International Committee of the Red Cross, which delivered them to the Israeli army. The army, of course, still remaining in Gaza, and 53% of the enclave. The captives were checked. They received an initial medical checkup. They were then transported from the Re'im military base to a civilian facility. Donald Trump is, in fact, expected to meet, or maybe he has already met, with the families of Israeli captives, although we haven't seen lines or pictures of that. But that was certainly on his schedule. The whole choreography of this, Darine, was designed around Trump. This is Trump's show, really, for the Israelis, especially for the families of Israeli captives who are rejoicing in Trump's victory in securing the freedom of their sons, and for Hamas, which wanted to prove that it's committed to fulfilling its end of the bargain. And we heard from Donald Trump there in the plane saying that Hamas is doing its part. It is going to go through with fulfilling the agreement, at least in phase one, and that he understands that there's a lot of needs on the ground for the population, that Israel has killed almost 70,000 people and has devastated Gaza, turned it into a demolition site, as Trump said. So a lot of things are moving, all revolving around Donald Trump.
Okay, Noor, thank you.
Don't miss out. Get the full picture. Subscribe to Al Jazeera for reliable news, expert insight. Like, share, stay ahead.